The mysteries of the heart. Finding emotional balance between self and others. The Mysteries Trilogy Part 2. The Mysteries of the Heart. Finding emotional balance between self and others. The Bridge to the Heart Study Questions for emotional balance, including self inventory. The Bridge to the Heart. Once the body has made room for the spirit, by our humble efforts to bring consciousness to the deeper needs of the body, we can begin to heal the soul. The physical, emotional and mental spheres are interdependent. But interdependent does not mean enmeshed or entangled, but points to a more autonomous form of cooperation. The intellect has penetrated these three spheres and hinders them from their own individual expression. When the intellect spills over into the body, one is filled with ideologies about food which block the body's own intuitive wisdom. The first part of this trilogy, The Mysteries of Nutrition, was focused on the clearing out of this interference. The intellect can also contaminate the mind. It destroys the possibility of pure observation by interjecting judgments all the time, or by distraction and mental chatter. This hinders the healing spirit from entering into the mind from moment to moment. A true fortress. Inner work such as daily meditation plays a key role here. Anyone may begin his or her own daily practice, taking from traditions found in well-founded spiritual or religious movements. To be clear, I do not oppose the mind in favor of the heart as is often the case in many self-help books today, nor do I propose a shortcut to being present in the now, without healing the trauma of the past. The intellect, like a sword, must be sharp and ready to be used when needed, but must then be placed back into its sheath. It is not needed to watch the sunrise or to laugh, for example. The intellect is not something one should try to oppose either. We lose power in this effort, but just to observe it operating clearly is sufficient to begin. When the intellect is disassociated, uprooted from the rational and sobering effects of reason, it becomes a dangerous object in the human psyche. Thought and the act of thinking itself does not stem from the intellect. Thought is spiritual in nature, a dynamic event. Once the heart and mind are working in unison with the body, spiritualized thinking moves into this unique space and the crystal clear eye of the heart-mind begins to see, not in a dreamy clairvoyant vision or trance, but with a full, modern and progressively awake consciousness. The language of the heart also suffers from this mental pollution which keeps the heart from being able to feel, honor and release its suffering. This blocks the spirit at a deeper level. We get lost in mental anger, resentment, hate, blame, and victimhood, which are intellectual interpretations masquerading as feelings. We convince ourselves that we feel betrayed, but betrayal is not a feeling. Sadness is, however. Do you sense the different frequency of sadness over betrayal? Sadness is deeper, more internal, and it is without blame. These are quite often mental strategies to keep us from feeling our pain. So instead of honestly seeking our own part in all the experiences we attract into our lives, we escape into ideologies because at the root we are afraid to change and challenge our ideas. Afraid to let the toxic relationship fail. Afraid to let our ideas die and be reborn. Afraid to simply feel the underlying emotions. This is understandable, as there may be much trauma, shame, and pain in those depths. We stay polarized instead of finding deeper unity. We lash out instead of reaching out to those we perceive as being our enemies. We blame others. We stay divided, and therefore not truly individual, indivisible, yet ourselves. We are not truly free yet. Our collective cultural programming still conditions us, and our partners, parents or society's ideas are absorbed unchecked. People with original yet challenging ideas, coming from hard-won flexible minds are often disliked, hated or worse, especially if they challenge the politically correct thinking paradigm by trying to heal the divide or try to show others the way to unity. But being aligned with the signs of the times, these diamonds among us, become guiding lights over time, as they have a greater capacity to endure than most. The questions included focus on the underlying symphony of principles of our existence. They were inspired and used by hundreds of others already in 12-step meetings in adapted form to great results. The 12 steps in 12 traditions are the inspiration for these questions, and it is recommended to read these as part of the work. These questions have been adapted from the original questions in order to include people who are not familiar with recovery language. The questions belong to no one. While this book is copyrighted, the questions are not, and their distribution is not based on the sales of this book, as they may be freely distributed online or anywhere else to thousands, even if only one book is sold. The goal was to bring this work out into the world so that it could be used and applied in all of our affairs. Rendering the work anonymous, focusing only on the principles and how they apply to our relationships, and thus making them available to a wider range of people. Find a partner or a friend. Answer a section at a time. Read your written responses to each other once a week, by phone or in person, acting as mirrors, each reading their response to their question or asking for feedback when needed. It may take 6 months to over a year to complete. But go at your own pace. No rush. Do it in the order it was written, but if one partner needs to move ahead, or one partner needs to go slower, this is fine. The partners do not have to be on the same area to advance. It is an organic process. One can adapt the steps and traditions to fit with your own challenges or problems by replacing 2 or 3 program-specific words here and there for personal or couples use and asking for written permission if you intend to publish any modifications. For example, we are powerless over underscore 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 underscore. Fill in the blank. The deeper wisdom of the 12 steps and 12 traditions is known by few. The majority of people in recovery programs have only begun to scratch the surface. We are all standing in front of an inner gold mine with the keys to the door in our hand. This wisdom, when we work it, can help us find the balance between the individual and the community, the inner masculine and feminine parts of us, the adult and the inner child, the vertical and the horizontal, the earthly and the cosmic, and the relationship with the self and with others. Emotional healing is the art of balancing polarities, of harmonizing the opposites, not removing the flow of life. Learning to have poise and balance in all situations, and if we fail often, we learn from it, and then we forgive ourselves. This is an essential part of finding balance. We learn to feel our emotions of joy and pain inwardly, yet we have a new freedom to choose when, if and how we express these emotions to the outer world. We do our best to stay present, keeping our connection with ourself, as we travel along the adventurous path of becoming who we are. We learn to be flexible in our thinking yet firm when needed. We learn to be both qualities at any given time. We understand the truth that sometimes the calm person is dead wrong, whereas the angry one is in the right. We let go of the PC way of seeing things. We learn that change always challenges our thinking. A white knight doesn't arrive on the scene and take us into the sunset. The hero usually makes us question ourselves. A full stop. The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Change is always a funky experience, and we don't just line up for it. We often have to get out of our own way to find the courage to seek deeper resources for any real transformation. We also must learn patience, humility and character building for its own sake if we hope to unlock our destiny. May we heal our pain and be a true friend to ourselves and others along the way. Being real with others in a compassionate way is ideal, but beware of perfectionism, as we will make many mistakes. If your feathers get ruffled, and you overreact, you will see that the second or third time it happens, you will have more awareness if you keep working at it daily. You may have a good point that the other cannot yet understand. You may also be acting from a place of love, trying to show the other your boundaries, your strength, your truth or your courage. We may also just need to learn how to listen strivingly, even to our fiercest critics. Each situation is different. Without boundaries, we enable toxic behavior in our lives, first and foremost with how we treat ourselves. Learning to say no is a hard lesson. It was for me, but it is actually a yes to ourselves, especially in the traumatized, yet in full denial, world we live in. Our denial drives us to the stark gates of hell on earth if we let it. Pain is often love in disguise, softening our ego, a solvent for the soul. With time we learn to be loving yet firm, patient yet assertive. At times it may even feel that we are separating from others, which may be necessary, physically speaking, But these are the growing pains of learning to let go and trust. We learn to build order and a breathing spiritual structure around the heart. We learn to accept our unique journey with reverence and gratitude. Compassion is not without dignity. It is not a blind love thrown into the wind, but it comes from having first and foremost one's own self-respect, or it has little value at all. If the simple golden rule applies, to treat others as we would like to be treated, it all distills down to respecting ourselves. Unlike the maze of love which yearns eternally back and forth, we are learning a more adult love, in which order and love form a unity. From the incessant control tower of the intellect, we begin to come down into loving ourselves. Step by step, with increasing serenity, we build the bridge to the heart. Study questions for emotional balance, including self-inventory, honesty and unity. Which defects of mine may keep me from facing my powerlessness? In what ways have we tried to escape from our life, from our emotions? Some examples to research. Through alcohol, drugs, sex, money, work, food. The 7 deadly sins are your own example. Make a list of situations where you notice unmanageability in your life. Make a resistance list of ideas which keep me from letting go of my old patterns, including how I use denial, avoidance, control, low self-esteem, rebellion and playing the victim to avoid change. We involves relationships. How do we honestly feel about asking for help from others? Why is it so important to admit our powerlessness? What power do I have which can be positive for my recovery? Slight pause to allow for integration. Am I willing to see that my own personal evolution is dependent on my contribution to the unity within my relationships or community? How are the two related? What must I let go of in order to embrace the common welfare of a given relationship? How is putting the common welfare first useful in a relationship? To other aspects of my life, work, family, daily activities. What could I improve in my efforts to bring a spirit of unity to those who are on the edge, on the margins of society? To those who I dislike? What does unity mean to me? If I put the community's needs at 51% and my individual needs at a close 49%, how does this foster relationships? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Trust and faith. What may prevent me from either believing in or allowing a higher power, of my own choosing, to work in my life? Sanity could be defined as wholeness of the physical, emotional and the spiritual. What does it mean to you to be restored to sanity? Is it difficult for me to really trust in my higher power? How does the past relate to this? Parents, role models, authority figures. Have I acted as my own or as another's higher power? Give examples. Why is it important to see trust as a process and not a perfect destination? Slight pause to allow for integration. Cultivating leadership is key to building confidence. Name a situation where someone has tried to lead by example, by being inclusive and supportive to you. How does believing in others' talents and abilities relate to emotional balance? Why is it important that the higher power we choose, God, community, the universe, spirit, energy, eternal qualities such as beauty, truth, art, etc., be a loving force? How are trusting and being loved related? Do I try to govern or direct those around me? How do healthy boundaries and guidelines foster greater peace than controlling others? Give examples. How can I raise awareness without singling out someone, unless this is absolutely necessary, who may be contributing to disunity in the community or relationship? How does fighting from the flank, instead of head-on, relate to this? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Decision and surrender. What does it mean to turn over our will and our lives to the care of our higher power? How are service and surrender related? Why do we resist loving ourselves completely? What fears do we have about being loved? What comes up for you as you consider turning over some of your emotional life to your higher power? How are letting go and giving more time to work on your recovery related? What signs indicate that I need to let go? Slight pause to allow for integration. What does a better life look like for you? What is it like when you really connect to your true self? How does it feel? How does judgment block the receptivity of an open mind? How does being free of judgment contribute to emotional balance? Why is belonging to a group or community important? How does challenging ourselves to connect with others help us heal emotionally? How can I apply the spirit of open-mindedness to other areas of my life and to those who do not share my views? What can I do to make sure that people feel welcome around me? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Courage and liberty. What does it mean to be fearless? How are love and fear related? List each fear, why you have it, your responsibility, and what is a better way forward. Write out one resentment, the needs that are unmet in the situation, and then our own part in the situation. How does listing and sharing our positive qualities contribute to our emotional balance? How can affirmations help when the inner vultures of shame try to sabotage our confidence? How can these voices feed the ego victim part of ourselves? Have some of our resentments and anger masked hurt feelings and sadness? Explain. Complete the self-inventory on the next page. Inventory chart. Column 1. Make a list of all the people, places, institutions, ideologies that you resent, have hurt you or affected your life. Most family members, friends, bosses, co-workers, boyfriends, lovers, etc. Add those that you have hurt. including sex relations, last. Column 2. Feelings. What are our underlying feelings with this person, situation, idea, etc.? Are we sad, lonely, angry, hurt, disappointed, tired, powerless, confused, frustrated, scared, shamed, disconcerted, nervous, impatient, annoyed, resentful, discouraged, disheartened, overwhelmed, hopeless, etc.? Plus joyful, alive, grateful, relaxed, touched, serene, confident, adventurous, inspired, calm, trusting, etc. The plus feelings are not for the first inventory. They may be used later for gratitude. Asterisk anger may mask hurt feelings. Asterisk betrayal is not a feeling. It is an interpretation which keeps us from facing the sadness, hurt, etc. Column 3. Needs. What needs, desires, values are not being met here? Self-esteem, love, deeper connection with self or others, need for boundaries, structure, order, appreciation for our efforts, support, mutual respect, serenity, ease, rest, action, growth, change, confidence, autonomy, contribution to the lives of others, availability, self or others, clarity, consideration, community, emotional security, to be heard, understood, for honesty, safety, coherence, physical needs, guidance, rhythm, progress, to belong, sexual expression, fairness, kindness, dependability, tenderness, intimacy, etc. Asterisk certain needs may be covering a deeper need for connection. Column 4. My responsibility. Now we remove the other person involved entirely and try to find our part in the situation. Even if other is 99% at fault, we must identify our 1%, or quite often our 99%, if we are to be free. Explore any self-centeredness, dishonesty, fears, projections of our defects onto others, any fantasy, lack of boundaries. Do we enable others through lack of firmness? What is my responsibility for holding on to this burden for so long? Are we caught in roles, expectations? What were my motivations here? Was I inconsiderate? Do I control through avoidance, compliance, by playing the victim or the rebel? Do I escape my emotions and intuitions? Am I honest about why I attract these situations? Broken relationship with self. Am I in denial about the need to heal my past and my traumatic experiences? Am I living in my values? How have I harmed myself or others with this? Asterisk. As children, we were true victims. These feelings must be honored and released. However, as we age, we may nurse these experiences to feed the mental ego victim, to avoid feeling consequence, over or underformed development of the self. Column 5. Action. Now that I am seeing this pattern or behavior, what action am I ready to take to move towards the person I want to be? Slight pause to allow for integration. Do people and communities have the right to be wrong? How does tolerance of the mistakes of others and ourselves contribute to emotional balance? How does the freedom that comes from autonomy unite us? What are the limitations of autonomy? When I believe that others have their own higher power, how does this bring serenity? Do I offer solutions to others without being aware of their need for autonomy? How does this block intimacy with the people in my life? What does autonomy mean to you in a relationship? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Integrity and communication. What is the relationship between admitting to ourselves our wrongs, sharing these with another, and forgiveness? How does allowing ourselves to be vulnerable help us to heal? How are boundaries and vulnerability related? Which defect or pattern comes closest to the exact nature of my wrongs, my disconnection from myself? What do I gain by holding on to this defect? Why is the feeling of belonging such a key to healing? Why is it important to cultivate our relationship with our higher power, with ourselves and with others in recovery, in that order, to be able to release years of pain and trauma? After sharing your inventory with another, you may move on. Give an example or an area of life in which you are still suffering emotionally, spiritually, etc. What is the message of recovery? How was the message carried to me? What does it mean to you? I can't keep it unless I give it away. When I see a friend truly suffering, how can I be of service to him or her? How does learning to focus on the needs in a given situation help my personal recovery? Can ideological divisions distract us from maintaining our inner unity if we give them that power? Explain. Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Acceptance of our humanity. Make a list of behaviors where your defects come up that could be improved upon. How can gratitude be used as a daily tool to prepare the heart to be ready to heal? How do I accept myself as I am and yet strive change any off behaviors? How are patience and action related? Why is it important that compassion towards others and one's own truth not be separated? What happens when we go too far into one without the other? How does holding on tightly to my defects in any area block out the light of recovery? Is this intended? Explain. Slight pause to allow for integration. How can problems of money, property or prestige distract us from focusing on the needs of those around us and ourselves? How does trying to convert people inside or outside the program relate to prestige? When we place service to our community above monetary gain, how does this heal our relationship with money and attract more abundance into our lives? What may divert me from getting in touch with my underlying emotions? How can authority divert us from effectively transmitting the message of recovery? On the other hand, do we acknowledge that invested authority can serve a noble purpose in many situations? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Humility and balance. What are the shortcomings that I would like to have removed? How does perfectionism hinder our recovery? What is your definition of humility? What fears do I have about changing? How does listening and sharing this work help me to accept others? What is the difference between humbly asking for shortcomings to be removed and demanding? Slight pause to allow for integration. How can letting go of the idea of easy money bring us closer to being self-supporting, emotionally balanced people? How can it hurt a community or a relationship if the same person is always leading? Why is anonymity so important when we give donations or other services to others? How can we learn to give unconditionally without seeking anything in return? In what ways can I be self-supporting in my personal life? Do I allow others the same privilege? How can we use our general interests, hobbies or pastimes in a group setting to mend our difficulties connecting with others? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Willingness and vulnerability. What is the difference between an apology and an amends? Are we willing to make amends with our past? If not, how do we become willing? How does this relate to humility? How has being better than others or less than others harmed my relationships? Give examples. How have my resentments towards others caused damage to myself or damage to others? Give examples. Why is it important to forgive ourselves before making amends? Make a list of all those that I have harmed in this life, writing out their name and my own part in the matter. Slight pause to allow for integration. Do I play the professional or the expert, advising others without being asked in some shape or form? Give examples. Give an example when we have used therapy language to try to control another. How can playing the expert keep intimacy out of our relationships? What value is there in sharing our experience through the language of the heart instead of name-dropping self-help techniques to others? Why is it important to let down our guard and be vulnerable with someone we trust? What is the relationship between strength and vulnerability? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Forgiveness and responsibility. Can doing financial amends help me in my finances today? How are the two connected? How can amends to others help me in my relationships today? Give examples. What is a living amend? Should they be used to replace direct, in-person amends? Explain. How does listening to others, their feelings and needs, help me heal? How can unnecessary delay, putting off or trying to soften up our amends be enslaving? Make a list of the amends, the words you will say, and then run each one by your recovery partner, get feedback, then proceed to do as many as you can, with rigor, yet with tact and a healthy dose of active listening. Do direct amends, wherever possible, to those you have harmed unless doing so would injure them or others. Slight pause to allow for integration. Being a subtle form of division, why should we avoid clique mentality? What is the relationship between organization and control? How does letting go of controlling others lead to emotional balance? How can too much mental organization block one's emotional ability to receive, to listen, to be open? How can I let go of wanting to be right? Would I rather be right or have connection with others? How does a dynamic structure, flexible when needed yet firm when needed, attract others? How can formality block authenticity? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Perseverance and clarity. Why is it important to promptly admit our wrongs? How can unneeded delay be dangerous? Which shortcomings can be obstacles to doing a daily inventory? How can trying to maintain appearances keep me from deeper levels of recovery? Explain. What other areas of my life need recovery? How does reviewing our day, at midday and before bed, bring order to the mind? To bring a sense of balance to my daily inventory, what good things have I done today? Slight pause to allow for integration. Do we try to willfully convince others with our opinions? Or are we able to be open to what the conversation may bring? Can political or religious debates pull us away from our center? How can we have compassion for others on their own path, yet stay true to our own, apparently different, path? How can we encourage others, yet not be afraid to be real and authentic? How does expressing our opinions without reserve distract us from staying focused on those who may be suffering? How does equality and freedom play into an emotionally balanced relationship? How does the delicate art of restraint of our opinions foster unity? How does it attract others to us? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Focus and intimacy. How does availability to our higher power, to ourselves, and to others help us to start attracting richer relationships into our lives? Begin a daily prayer practice and share how you feel about this. Keep in mind, prayer does not have to be traditional. You can use affirmations, check in with your feelings or true self, mantras, verses or whatever is sacred to you. Why is it important to pray for? The power to carry our higher power's will for us. Do we pray then act anyway, or do we pause and wait for clarity? How does aligning ourselves with our higher power's will for us bring us serenity? What is the relationship between humility and serenity? If you have not done so already, begin a daily meditation practice of your own choosing. How does daily meditation help us to focus our energy? Slight pause to allow for integration. What does it mean to me to use the principle of attraction rather than promotion in my relationships? When we relate with others on send mode, how does this block intimacy? What is the relationship between doing the work to heal the pushed down pain or traumas and attraction? How is attraction related to being open-minded? How is attraction related to humility? Which shortcomings may keep me from putting attraction before promotion as a way of interfacing with others? On the other hand, what is the noble value of promotion when it doesn't overpower attraction? Before moving on, make sure integration is felt. Sometimes outer events will bring this about. Principles in service to others. What does it mean to you? The promise that by doing this work you will know a new freedom. How do I bring these principles into the rest of my life? Give examples. One of the most universal needs is connection. How has this need been met through doing the work? What have you discovered about yourself? Have we tried our best to carry the message to others? How is humility related to the message? How is emotional healing related to a spiritual awakening? What will we do with our awakening? How can we try to carry this message to others? Slight pause to allow for integration. Are we able to put principles before personalities, especially in those cases of personalities that we dislike? Individual means undivided. Do we let opposition divide us from each other? In love relationships, how does putting our values in front of isolated physical attraction help us to find a more balanced relationship? Sacrifice is the essence of anonymity. What must be sacrificed in order to be anonymous? What are your thoughts on the wisdom that states, "The true hero helps the community in such a way that most never know it was him/her"? Why must we be ever reminded to place principles before personalities as we trudge the road of happy destiny? Do I understand the value of having a beginner's mind? Integration of body and soul leads to an awakening of spirit. Part 3. Part 3 is available upon having integrated parts 1 and 2, and contacting the author. Part 3. The mysteries of the mind and spirit. Breaking the chains of our conditioning by spiritualizing our thinking.